What's going on, guys? Back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about wheel spacers and if they are safe to run. There seems to be some misconception or some bad things going around about wheel spacers and how they could possibly be unsafe, and people don't recommend installing them. And I think that the big one for me is that or the excuse is that the original equipment manufacturer didn't, the engineers behind it didn't design the car, that the geometry of the car is not meant to be altered, and putting wheel spacers in there changes the geometry and the overall handling of the car and the characteristics and yada yada yada. I mean, it goes on and on. The funny thing is that you could say that about every aftermarket part that's ever existed, or performance part. Every part is going to alter the characteristics of the car, or most parts. I mean, you're changing something. You're making it more stylistic, or more better performance, or better handling, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, want to do some engine modifications. Well, you're going to change the characteristics of the output of the motor. It's going to make more power. It's going to make more torque, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you're changing something on it, and that's kind of the idea behind doing these types of add-ons or upgrades or whatever. You're changing the characteristics of the car. I mean, you could say the same thing with the lowering springs. You're changing the center of gravity on the car. It's going to change the characteristics of how the car handles, and whatnot. You're going to change the look of it. So my belief is that there is a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things, and it's the same rule applies to spacers. There's the right type of spacer and there's the wrong type of spacer. There's the right way of installing and there's the wrong way of installing. Really, if you get the right spacer for your application, it really is no wrong way. You can't really mess it up. The problem is you have a few different variations, and sometimes people choose the wrong variation and you end up with issues. With that being said, the three variations are your generic wheel spacer. This is not a generic wheel spacer. This is a vehicle-specific wheel spacer. A generic wheel spacer would not have, first and foremost, it would not have this flange on here, this flange right here. The inner bore of the spacer would probably not be very well matched to the car. It'd be like a one-size-fits-all type of thing. You'd probably be able to get a couple different bolt patterns or whatever, but the inner bore of it would probably be a little bit bigger or whatever. So when you go to install this, it's going to have some slop on it. It's not going to fit on there very well. You're gonna try and have to figure out a way to center it on the hub before installing the wheel. And if so happens that this thing shifts when you do install the wheel, and it kind of slides up or down or left or right or whatever, when you go to torque the wheel down, you might not have proper clamping force all the way around the spacer, and there's the potential that because of that you might have a bolt that's under torqued. You might have ones that are over torqued, and if that happens, there's a good chance that one of those wheel studs or lug nuts is going to maybe back off, or multiple lug nuts are going to back off. And then you get on the highway and you're doing 70 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you get this like death wobble from the front or rear of your car. And you're like, what the heck? Pull over and your freaking wheel is all loose. Well, to combat that, you basically have to make sure you get the proper wheel spacer. There's two different variations that I would recommend. One is this type. This type here comes with extended wheel studs. These are manufactured by H&R. Comes with extended wheel studs. This is a 15 millimeter spacer. It is hub centric, meaning that the inner bore matches the hub bore, or the flange on the hub. There's a little flange, a little lip on the hub, and this will slip on there nice and form fitted. Slips right on there. There's not going to be any slop or any play. Now when I put the wheel on, it is also wheel centric. There's a flange on the outside. The wheel will slip onto that, nice and fitted on there very nicely. There's not going to be any slop. So when I torque this down, it's going to be just like torquing it down to, you know, like I was just torquing the wheel down onto onto the hub itself. It's going to have nice, even clamping force. The torque is going to be, you know, if you're using a torque wrench, it's going to be the same torque all the way, you know, number all the way around. I think it's like, I don't know what this is, 80 foot-pounds or whatever. You're going to have a consistent torque all the way around. You're not going to have to worry about this thing coming off. I mean, you shouldn't. If I was worried about this, then I should be worried about the wheel coming off right now. You know what I mean? But it's meant for, it's vehicle specific. I mean, obviously there's different spacings of, this would fit, you know, multiple cars with maybe different bolt patterns, but all have the same, you know, inner bore. I think this one's 54.1, if I'm not mistaken. This is for the Corolla hatchback, or for the Corolla. It might even fit the sedans, but I'm not really sure about that. But point being, this is meant to fit on the car perfectly. You know what I mean? So I don't have any issues with that. The other spacer is one that has pre-existing wheel studs. Now they're already inserted into the spacer, and basically what you do, it's up-centric and wheel-centric. It's got the flanges on there, so it's nice slip fit. But the big part is that you would basically bolt the flange, or the spacer, excuse me, the spacer to the hub, torque it down, and then put your wheel on top of the spacer and then torque your wheel down, all using the factory torque specs. The problem with doing that with something like this, and the reason why I went with this type of variation, because I got the extended wheel studs, is I don't have to worry about any provisions or issues with the backside of that wheel. If a spacer that's narrow like this, the wheel studs might protrude out a little bit, and you're going to probably end up having to shave them down or something like that. You're going to have to probably lob them down to make room for the wheel to fit on there. Now, some wheels have an area that's like concaved on the backside, so when you slip the wheel over, the wheel studs will actually kind of go inside that little convexed area of the wheel, and you won't have that issue. But if it's relatively flat, you're not going to have any clearance there, any room for the studs, and basically the wheel is going to be getting clamped down on those studs, and that could cause some big problems down the road. So you definitely do not want to do that. And the reason why I went with this type of spacer, and again using the extended wheel studs. But if you were to do like an inch spacer with the pre-installed wheel studs, you wouldn't have that issue. I actually ran a set of 1-inch spacers on my Mustang a few years back before I decided to get some aftermarket wheels, and because it was so thick, the spacer's so thick, it actually, the wheel studs were countersunk in a little bit. So when I put the wheel on, it sat nice and flat on there. There's no protrusion of the studs. So but yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, it really depends on what you're trying to do, how thick you're going. For something like this, I think this is the best option right here. I didn't have to do any modifications to my stock wheel studs. It's pretty simple to just press out the old ones and pop these ones in. So yeah, you know, but again, I think there's just some misconception about wheel spacers. I think there's a right way, a wrong way. There's you know, a right spacer for you know, every particular application. Again, I just would not go with those ones that are just a generic kind of one size fits all. I just don't see any good coming from that. You really need something that is going to be specific to your car, wheel centric, hub centric. Get that bore size, and you know, get the right bore size for your car, and I think it'd be good to go. And you know, just you know, just do things the right way, and you're not going to have any issues down the road. But that's it. You know, stay tuned. I will be installing these. Probably have a video up either tomorrow or the next day for the Corolla here. We're going to get it lowered, and I'll put these spacers on here, and that should really give it a nice overall look. You know, I mean, not probably too drastic, but nice and clean, and just get it sitting a little bit better for me, and hopefully make it handle a little bit better. So stay tuned for that. Again, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.